here's what's going on. The stimulus dropped pretty much overnight, more or less. And this is another one of those, for instances, where they had the quote unquote stimulus relief. And then they also had the spending bill where, who knows what's all in it? Well, nobody, apparently. Joy, what do you call a government that will pass bills that nobody's read and no one knows what's in it, but won't vote on bills that 70 to 80% of the country wants? What do you call that? What's the word for that?
I'm going to say a circle jerk with stooges. Maybe. Circle jerk.
I like it. I like it because there's 2 band references in there.
Exactly.
So you get an A+. Yeah, that's an A+ right there. But yeah, it's so. And it's just you think of all these things that most of the country wants. Medicare for all. You can go back to, they wouldn't even vote on the Save the Internet bill, which was a bill that was 4 pages long, just gave us net neutrality back. Net neutrality, something 83% of the country wants across political spectrums. They won't even vote on this stuff. But here's a bill. No one knows what's in it. And okay, we're fine. And we're supposed to still adhere to the dog and pony show and pretend like it's not a dog and pony show and pretend like it's not a scam. Well, it is a freaking scam. It's a scam. And absolutely. Here's what makes it worse. They're going after people like us too. And when I say people like us, I mean content creators. Here's some of the stuff that's in this stimulus, quote unquote, that nobody's talking about. Check this out. So this is from Fight for the Future. Fight for the Future has learned that the 3 controversial changes to copyright law, the CASE Act, Felony Streaming Act, and Trademark Modernization Act, are in fact included in the must-pass omnibus spending bill. So more than 20,000 people had called on House and Senate leadership to remove these dangerous and unnecessary provisions from this bill. I was one of those people. I signed the petition. I know a lot of y'all did as well. We were tweeting it out. So here's what Evan Greer, friend of the show, here's what she had to say about this. This is atrocious. We're facing a massive eviction crisis and millions are unemployed due to the pandemic, but congressional leaders could only muster $600 stimulus checks for COVID relief, but managed to cram in handouts for content companies like Disney. The CASE Act is a terribly written law that will threaten ordinary internet users with huge fines for everyday online activity. So the CASE Act is the act where if you post a meme or if you post certain types of content, because of these overreaching copyright laws, which again, these copyright laws don't help creators. It's not like laws like this help artists get paid better for their Spotify spins, which should be happening. What it does do is it allows people to penalize other people on the internet. And it'll penalize people for doing things that are fair use too, like using video clips, using articles. Who knows where it's going to end? We've seen time and time again that changes to copyright law have profound implications for online freedom and expression and human rights. These types of decisions should never be made in closed-door negotiations between politicians or industry or rushed through as part of some must-pass spending package. Artists and musicians especially are suffering immensely during the pandemic. Congress should be working quickly to provide immediate relief, not cramming controversial poison pill legislation into budget bills to appease social interest. So this is another example of technology and the law are not in sync. So what do? They pass shitty policy that affects people like us.
Absolutely. And how many streamers don't know that's in there? How many streamers are going to be inadvertently penalized because they're just doing what they do? And all of a sudden, oh shit, are they going to get a fine? Are they going to be taken off the air? What's going to go on? I mean, I've been doing a show over 3 years. I can't count how many times I've gotten, this is removed. This is, and you get it too. It's absolutely crazy. And now, I mean, do you think that this is targeting independent media and such because of the fear of freedom of speech and the fear of us taking on the establishment?
I think that's part of it. I mean, I think there's a number of things going on. I mean, I think it's also the lobby of all these, mega corporations who just want their quote intellectual property protected. And I think this is also another power grab to, penalize people and make more money. I think this is also related to censorship to an extent, because this will lead to more censorship, not less. And this is all connected to, the Trump administration blowing up Section 230, which, adheres to all speech on the internet. So now all of these entities, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, they're going to censor more, not less, because they're scared of any given lawsuit from who knows who. So they're just going to stifle any speech that they deem as risque. And you're going to have FCC bureaucrats enforcing this stuff anyway. So it's kind of like, in an attempt to try to prevent censorship, you imposed more of it, because people don't understand that you can't fix a problem with shittier policy. But that's the United States government so often. Hey, here's a problem. Let's make it shittier.
Right. And I think another thing I thought of, which may be, I'm not sure, it may be overreaching, but let's think about how many people have canceled their cable since people like us have started shows.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these cable companies are noticing. I mean, they're still rich as hell, don't get me wrong, but they are noticing millions of people unsubscribing and not having cable anymore because of streamers like us.
I think that's definitely part of it. I mean, I don't think any of that is overreaching. I think at the end of the day, it really comes down to dollars for these entities. And so, yeah, I mean, they still see the internet as a Wild West. So they're going to try to change that. And people I know that a lot of people, it's hard to wrap their heads around that, because they can't imagine the internet being different than what we know it as today. But think of how different radio was. Think of how different television was. The internet is still just another medium. Yeah, it's the next step in technology, sure, but it's still just another medium. To think that corporate powers can't control that medium and take it from we the people, you're just being naive. They can. And they're laying the seeds to do that. I mean, from the repeal of net neutrality to gutting Section 230 to controversial overreaches like this, and what happened? It was pushed through overnight in a spending bill where no one knew what all was going on. What else did they do that with? What else did they push through overnight where no one knew what the hell was really going on and what was in something? The Telecommunications Act. Well, yeah, the crime bill too. Yeah, there's a lot of examples. But like, what I was thinking of the Telecommunications Act, because that,
right.
I mean, that was arguably some of the worst media policy legislation of both of our lifetimes. Same story. No one really knew exactly what it was going to do. No one really knew exactly what it was. It has had catastrophic effects. Here's another moment of that same thing happening. And who knows? I mean, this could be another day where it's like, we'll remember the day this was passed. This was the catalyst that changed the internet as we know it.
Right, absolutely. And I'm not sure if you saw this, and I don't know the exact verbiage, but this morning I saw a post that's screenshotted and going around. AOC made a post, and all other things aside, she made a post that said, if you guys didn't want me to vote for this, you should have told me. And we're all just like,
has she checked her Twitter?
There's so much shit wrong with that post. I can't even wrap my head around it. Like,
I can't either. This is my first time hearing about it.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible. I had to read it several times because I was like, this is not. I just screenshotted it. Let me see.
Oh, I wasn't doubting you. I know it's.
I'm just trying to find the exact words.
Was there a bunch of people underneath saying we did?
Yes, like thousands of comments like, I'm a constituent and I did. Yeah, it's really incredible to pass it on to us when we're the ones who got you elected, whether we're in New York or not. We campaigned, we, propped you up, we did all these things. And, there's tons of us activists who are, posting online and saying, I've interviewed her. I've spoken. I've been a scheduled speaker at a same event. She was a scheduled speaker. So I've interacted with her. Like, for her to say that and take it out on us and say we should have told her what to do. We're telling you what to do with something else and you're not going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, we're also encouraging you to force the vote, and you don't want us to do that. And apparently we're not supposed to tell elected officials what we want. We're just supposed to be nice to them. Meanwhile, here they are telling us, hey, tell me what to do. So what is it? What is it? Are you above scrutiny? Are we not supposed to encourage you to force a vote on healthcare during a pandemic? But we are supposed to tell you how you're supposed to vote one way or another? Or can we just criticize you selectively? Like, what's the freaking rule? Or maybe it's just you're supposed to be an elected official for the people. And this isn't just, this goes to everyone, not just AOC. You're supposed to be an elected official for the people. But because we have a banana republic corporate coup of a government, nobody is. And that's the freaking problem. That's the freaking problem. So, yeah, you can't take this out on us. We can take it out on you because you are, when people say stuff like, well, AOC is not part of the problem. The problem is da-da-da-da-da. It's like, well, here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. We elected AOC because we wanted her to be part of the solution. So if she's not going to be part of the solution and just passively accept the problem, then she's turning her back on the movement that got her elected. And that doesn't just go that goes to everyone else too. That goes to the squad, that goes to the entire progressive caucus. Although, describing some of the members in there as progressive is quite a stretch. But nonetheless, they're in that group or whatever. So, well, okay, if you're going to campaign on healthcare, we expect you to do something about it. Right. And if you're just going to roll over and do nothing about it, I mean, what is wrong? Like, the NHS got voted down 21 times by the Tories. 21 times it got voted down. There was a point in time where virtually no doctors were for it, but people kept pushing. They, kept turning public opinion. And by the way, we're a lot further along than that now because over 70% of the country wants Medicare for all. Canada got their healthcare system one freaking province at a time. We're going up against one of the most powerful entities in the world, really, the big pharma in the United States, the insurance industry in the United States, which, because it has been allowed to exist as it has for so long, it is insanely powerful. They are going to do everything in their power to try to stop something like Medicare for all from ever happening. So we are up against this behemoth. We have to throw everything in the kitchen sink at this thing if we want any shot at all. And you're going to say now's not the time for a vote? Like, come on. And
it's very like, well, the Republicans won't put it through. Yeah, we know that. But you still should show up. You still should say, you know what? I'm still going to represent the people, even if it's not going, even if it'll get denied. You should still show up. You should still say, you know what? Fuck this. I'm going to represent we the people. And I'm going to tell you, I'm not voting for this shill unless we get a floor vote. Whether it's successful or not, we know the likely outcome. That's not the point. And people are missing that point. They still should be the activists they say they are. I recently interviewed Bernie Sanders' brother, Larry, and he's in the UK. He is the cutest, sweetest thing in the world.
Do you think they have really funny conversations when they're just like,
oh my God.
Like, do you think he's like, hey, Bernie, did you guys figure out healthcare yet? And he's like, Fuck you, Larry.
Yeah, he was telling me some of that. And
really,
he's an elected official. He represents the healthcare in the
he's a Green, right?
Green Party.
Right.
And he was, we were discussing the differences there. And he's like, I don't understand how you guys don't have what we have. And it was crazy.
You're like, fuck you, Larry.
Larry. Yeah, it's like, it was kind of interesting to, he shared some of what they talk about and how frustrating it is for Byrne to like see what his brother has and gets to accomplish, and then all the roadblocks Byrne has. But you
guys are giving more money to the NHS. They took down a fucking statue and were patting themselves on the back. That's all they did here. They just took down a statue.
This is a bunch of bullshit. This is malarkey. Yeah, I mean, I think what it comes down to is, it is frustrating to see, so many walls put up, but at the same time, he was filibustering for hours and hours on the floor, trying his hardest to get us more.
To get us a crumb. Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable.
So at least he showed up. So that's the thing. We should be able to expect that at the very, very least, they will fight for us. And we're not seeing a lot of that. He was standing with one other person. Where's Joe and Kamala? I don't freaking know. They're sure as hell not standing next to him.
They've been so quiet this whole time. Mm-hmm. I think that's another thing that I've never seen anything like this in my life, where a president-elect is just on the sidelines doing nothing. These repulsive things are happening. And by the way, we're going to go over some of the actual, there is one shred of good news. We've been covering some of the good news that actually did happen in this stimulus. We have been, shining a light on it and saying, hey, here's a good thing. Here's a good thing. But I'm not going to lose the overall theme here. The bad outweighs the good by a lot. And yeah, have you ever, can you think of a time in history where a president-elect has just been on the sidelines like this? Am I the only one who thinks it's really fucking weird, or do you think it's weird?
It's weird. And especially the time we're in, we have mass unemployment. We have mass, uninsured people. We have a pandemic. We have all these things that are unprecedented that nobody has ever dealt with in our lifetimes, which just makes it all the more bizarre that they're silent. And something I've said before, that it's kind of, funny and weird, but they haven't even respected us enough to lie to us, if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. Sorry, keep going. Yeah, no, I said something similar where I was just like, they're not even trying to pretend anymore. They're not even bothering to insult our intelligence.
Yep. And it's like, should they? No, but at the same time, at least act like you're going to do something for us. They literally are like, we don't care. We're making it blatantly clear. And that's why I was like, well, I guess you don't want my vote then.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, do you agree with this sentiment? I've said that, because I've always been, as long as I've been awake politically, I've been, a lefty. And I've always felt like, well, I don't really have a home politically in the United States, but, I guess this is kind of the closer way to get to the world that I want, blah, blah, blah. And in 2016, all of my worst suspicions about the Democratic Party were confirmed true. And now in 2020, all of my worst suspicions of the United States government were confirmed true. And I'm not going to sit there oh, I didn't know it was kind of a Wall Street scam until now, but it is worse than I think most people could ever wrap their heads around. I would not have predicted it would have been this bad, where it's just an apparent just beyond a slap in the face. It's not just like, oh, your government's being neglectful, your government's being irresponsible. No, your government is being hateful. They hate you. And that is not an embellishment or an understatement. They hate you.
Absolutely. I made a post yesterday. There's a great organization, To Write Love on Her Arms. And it's suicide prevention, but it's bands. They play shows,
cool.
They promote it, things like that. And it's really, I recommend checking it out. It's wonderful. I've donated to them for years. And I started thinking about yesterday, so many of us are just so damn depressed about so much crap. And, I made a post that said, people are more depressed than ever. Suicides are higher than ever. Things like cutting is higher than ever. And people are, using substance abuse and alcohol more than ever for escapism. And, people can't afford their medications. People can't afford to see a therapist. Things like this. This is outright violence. There is no other word for it. It is violence. You are telling the people that they are in a dire need, and you will not even talk to them, let alone help them. Trite saying, but the blood is on their hands. It is.
Do you think we'd be better off if we just impeached the entire thing? Like, just got rid of all of it and had a people's legislature, like what Mike Gravel calls for?
That would be practically utopian compared to what we're dealing with now.
And it'd be a mess, by the way. It'd be a mess. It wouldn't be,
yeah.
I mean, it would be, but I agree that it would be infinitely better than what we have now. We'd be better off.
Absolutely. I guess, my concern at that would be, it still would it not still be the same people picking the people? Because
it would cut out the middleman. When you have a government that is basically just a human shield for Wall Street, which is all they are, it just cuts out the middleman, and instead it's just like a people's legislature where it's like, yeah, you're still going up against those behemoths, but it would be it would be similar to the way, ballot items work and stuff like that. It would be like, we have the money, we have the power, so we're going to try to trick a bunch of people into voting against their own interests, which will work a lot. Will it work all the time? No. And I think overall we'd be better off. I mean, if every decision in this country was determined via a ballot measure, people would agree to a lot of really messed up shit that would make their lives a lot worse because of very powerful entities. But they'd make some good decisions too. And they wouldn't be able to stop a vote from happening for something that 70 to 80% of the country wants.
Absolutely.
That scenario wouldn't exist.
Absolutely. And that's probably why we haven't and likely won't see that situation.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're calling for a complete overhaul of the system, but I think it's sad we're at that point. Like, let me ask you this, because my answer is yes. Do you think that more people than not would be better off, and I'm talking worldwide and domestically, if the United States just stopped being a country and started being a country, or just didn't?
I've thought about that. If you would have asked me a few years ago, I would have probably had a different answer. I think, and not to sound like a shitlib, but I think, with Trump and the rise of fascism, which, was there just kind of under the covers, but seeing so many people just terrifyingly acting like complete, you know, sociopaths. I think that, you know, would kind of sway. I don't know. It's hard to say.
It is very hard to say. I just feel if we just kind of let the states do their own thing. I mean, I'm not saying like no, you know, organization whatsoever, but if states were just kind of left to do their own thing, and you know, we did away with basically the empire, I think the world would be infinitely better off. I think that is pretty much indisputable. If the United States wasn't setting the Middle East on fire and bombing all these countries, I mean, they'd all be better off. And I
So do
think
you think
that
that we could, like when it comes to war, I'm in Pennsylvania, so Pennsylvania could say yay and California say nay, and then how would it work? Like most votes kind of wins, or
well, I mean, I don't know how such a scenario would look. And I mean, I don't know if it's like the states would defend themselves. I mean, I don't really know. I just know that our behavior as a country and what the American government does to its own people, what the corporatocracy and the plutocracy, because I mean, the government's just sort of, I mean, more or less a facade these days. What they do to their own people and what they do abroad is just so morally repulsive and destructive that it's like, geez, it's almost, I mean, I feel like overall we'd be better off if the states just did their own thing and then we just did away with the idea. And I don't want to feel that way. I don't want that to be reality. But I feel like right now it is. There are some people who would be worse off. There are some people, because there are certain states that, you know, would be complete fascist authoritarian theocracies, which we pretty much already are, but they would be a complete you know, dive into those waters if they could be. So people who are stuck in some of those states who don't have the resources to leave, they'll be even worse off. But I would say overall, if you had to do an overall tally, more people would be better off than worse off here in the United States, even. I really do feel that way. I think you'd be better off. I think I'd be better off. I think a lot of people would be better off. And the people who would be worse off, hopefully the amount of people who would be better off would try to help those people. You know, I mean, that would be the ideal scenario.
right? Yeah, that's very interesting. I think we'll have to ruminate on that.
No. It's a heavy question, and there is no right or wrong answer because there's so many factors that would be yet to be determined. It's just it's just so sad that we don't live in a society where we can confidently say the good outweighs the bad as far as our leadership goes, and we can't say that, and a lot of other countries can. You know, it's not like, well, that's just how it is. No, it's inexcusable where we're at. It is absolutely inexcusable. And, you know, most countries aren't in that situation. Most industrialized countries can't say that. They can say, no, this is, you know, our government has its flaws and there's shitty stuff that happens. But, you know, overall, like there's a little bit of a shit given about the people who live there. We can't say that. We can't say that.
Absolutely.
So getting back to the digital rights portion of this, I got off on a tangent. I don't get to talk to you all that often these days. But so here's a little bit of details about the streaming part of this. So Tillis, this is a Republican out of North Carolina, pushes for prison time for online streamers. So Congress has once again put itself in a situation of having to pass a last-minute omnibus bill to fund the government and prevent a shutdown. These truly are must-pass bills since much of the government grinds to a halt without them. So here's what's going on. They want to have the Commercial Felony Streaming Act. They're going to have up prison time, and I think in some cases up to a $30,000 fine for, quote, illegal streaming. Well, what does that mean exactly? Well, you know how obviously it means like if you're streaming movies or something like that, but also remember during the debate season when all the cable news companies decided this was their intellectual property, even though it's a debate, a presidential debate that should be completely open to the public and orchestrated by the public. That's not the way it's organized here in the United States because we have a complete corporate takeover of everything. But remember when they were saying you can't stream this because it's our intellectual properties, and a bunch of streamers and online shows were doing it anyway because they were like, people have the right to see this even if they don't have cable, and people have the right to hear differing viewpoints. And this is our political system at work, and this is the public has a right to this. People like that could be fined 30 grand and thrown in jail. Gee, why is this Tillis guy pushing for this so hard? Here's a clue as to why. In the third and fourth quarters of 2020, Tillis' campaign and leadership PAC received donations from PACs affiliated with the Motion Picture Association, Sony Pictures, ASCAP, Universal Music Group, Comcast and NBC Universal, the Internet and Television Association, Salem Media Group, Warner Music, and others in the entertainment and cable industry that seek to suppress the unauthorized sharing of content. And otherwise, the people who want to nickel and dime you, the consumer, and online speech be damned.
Not shocking. I immediately knew he was going to be bought. This is almost like, as a music lover, you may, kind of remember this, but remember freaking Lars and Napster and stuff? That was kind of like the first taste of like, this is mine. You can't have it.
Yes. Well, and then Lars also was like, I'm doing this for the little guy. Yeah. And everybody knew that was bullshit. We're like, no, you're not. I'm doing it for the little guy. No, you're not, because the little guy, they make their money off of touring. And because of services like this, more people know about their music. That's what's going on. Absolutely. I remember that. Of course I remember. Are you a Metallica fan?
Old Metallica.
Oh yeah, I knew you were gonna say that.
I mean, I grew up. I'm 41. I grew up on Metallica.
There's speed metal type stuff. I enjoy it. I couldn't tell you much about it, but I enjoy the sound. And then after that, I kind of was like, like it wasn't really my cup of tea. I'm more of a Jethro Tall guy. That's true.
Wait, I know that name. What did they sing?
Aqualung and Locomotive Breath. Those are their big hits. They're like the prog rock. Well, they're loosely defined as prog rock, but they got that Grammy over Metallica for Best Heavy Metal Album, which was kind of goofy because they're not heavy metal at all. They have a flute, for fuck's sake, but they got Best Heavy Metal Album over Metallica, and it was just kind of humorous for everybody involved. So that's kind of been a running joke. I mean, you can go to a Jethro Tall show, and sometimes people will like jokingly yell "fuck Metallica." It's all in good fun. I mean, I'm sure there are many people who are fans of both artists. It's all in good fun, but yeah, that's the story there.
I think,
and maybe at Metallica shows, people yell "fuck Jethro Tall." I mean, I don't know. I mean, again, it's just a fun thing. It's not, malicious or anything. It's all in good fun, but yeah.
I would go see Metallica and say fuck Lars.
He'd sue you.
For what? I'm broke. I have nothing.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and make it our own. Get your